Hello everyone, thank you for watching. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will continue to show you more stories like this one. Alright, let's begin. I've been rich for 20 years. Not comfortable rich, not good job bonus rich. I mean the kind of rich where money stops being something you think about. Homes around the world, staff to keep them running. My body doesn't break down. My health doesn't fail. I don't age the way other people do. At charity dinners on rooftop decks, people always ask me the same thing. What's your secret? I smile and lie. I say hard work, timing, and building the right team. The truth is, none of this is mine. Everything I own, everything I am, belongs to a deal I made 20 years ago. It was February. The cold kind that burns your teeth when you smile. I had $93 left to my name. My landlord had taped a warning to my door. I'd lost 2 clients in the same week. My wallet carried a useless coffee shop punch card and a photograph of a woman who had already left me. That night I boarded a subway. The car was nearly empty. A man sat 3 rows down in a dark overcoat, his face half hidden under a hat. He didn't move, didn't fidget, just watched me. When the train stopped at 14th Street, he stood up, crossed the aisle, and sat directly across from me, close enough that I could smell the cold air clinging to his coat. His voice was quiet, steady. "I can give you everything you want," he said. I laughed, because what else could I do? Everything, huh? All the money you could dream of. Perfect health. A long life. What's the catch? He smiled, small, controlled, like someone showing you a tool that could cut you open. Then he tapped the metal rail beside him with a fingernail. 5 small things. Every day. Forever. Fail once, and you lose everything. I should have walked away. But desperation makes you polite to monsters. "What things?" I asked. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It felt dry, too dry, like it had been sitting in a drawer for 100 years. He slid it across to me. On the paper, written in slanted black ink, were 5 rules. 1. Place a gold coin where no one sees you. 2. Feed the black bird at your window. 3. Break a mirror before noon. 4. Burn a contract. 5. Write the name of a stranger in the black book. Note at the bottom. Do this every day. Do not stop. I looked up, ready to tell him he was insane, but the seat across from me was empty. The doors hadn't opened. There were no footsteps, just the smell of winter and that piece of paper in my hand. I thought it was some kind of prank, or maybe proof I was finally cracking under the pressure, but I kept the paper. The next morning, when every other door in my life felt slammed shut, I dragged myself to a pawn shop and bought a gold coin for $40. It wasn't faith that carried me there, just desperation. At 7:30 a.m., I slipped it under a loose stone in a back alley no one used. The act feeling more like surrender than belief. When I got home, I scattered breadcrumbs on the windowsill. A crow landed minutes later, black feathers dull against the weak light. Its eyes weren't normal. They looked too sharp, too aware. I fed it anyway, because what else was left for me to do? At 10:11 a.m., I smashed a small mirror from my bathroom. The sound startled me, but I swept the pieces away. At 11:05 a.m., I burned an old freelance contract I had kept for sentimental reasons. At noon, I sat on a park bench, opened a cheap black notebook I'd bought at a bodega, and wrote the name of a stranger walking by. A man in a green scarf. His name, overheard as someone greeted him, was Peter Klein. I waited for something to happen. Thunder. A sign. Anything. Nothing came. I felt like a fool. But that night, at 7:03 p.m., the phone rang. An old client. He said he had a tip, a risky one, but it smelled like money. I put in what little I had left because at that point, what else did I have to lose? 2 weeks later, I made $40,000. The next month, more, and then more. The crow came back every morning at the same time. If I was late feeding him, he tapped the glass. I named him Ash. The rituals became routine. Coin, bird, mirror, fire, name, then coffee, shower, and calls. At first I thought I was the one in control. I thought it was just a superstition, some strange habit I'd picked up. I thought I could stop any time. That was the first lie I told myself. The ritual settled into my mornings like clockwork: coin, bird, mirror, fire, name. Then coffee, shower, business. I didn't need alarms. My body woke up ahead of the schedule. By 7:30 I was already thinking about the coin. By 10, the mirror was waiting. By noon the book was open. Money came in steady waves. Deals found me. The markets bent in my favor. Introductions led to contracts. Contracts led to more introductions. When I did get blood work done, the numbers made doctors shrug and smile. I slept 5 hours, woke clear, and stayed that way. It felt like the world had decided to move with me instead of against me. Ash arrived every morning at the exact minute. If I was slow, he tapped once on the glass and waited. I fed him. He ate, cocked his head, then flew off. Precise. No games. I didn't reach out to touch him. I didn't try to test the distance. I kept the ritual simple because that's what the paper said to do. The mirrors became a problem. Breaking one a day adds up. I told the house staff to keep a stack of small ones in a cabinet. I joked about clumsiness. They accepted it. People who work for the rich learn to file away the parts that don't line up. The black book filled fast. I didn't try to pick worthy names or bad people. I kept it random. Someone on a subway ad, a byline on a magazine, a name tag at a store, a plaque in a park. I told myself that randomness kept me out of it. I told myself it didn't mean anything about me. I told myself a lot of things. The first time I noticed the link, I was shaving. The news muted on the bathroom TV ran a photo in the corner. A barista from Chicago found dead in her apartment. I knew her name because it was on the next page of the book. I'd written it 2 weeks earlier after she smiled at me when I asked for more napkins. I stared at the TV, cut myself, and bled into the sink. I didn't feel shock. I didn't feel much of anything. My hands moved on their own. The day went on. I kept doing the ritual. The daily sound of glass breaking became part of how I knew it was morning. Different sizes, different rooms. Same outcome. Sweep the sink. Throw the shards away. Move on. 15 years in, I made my first real mistake. I was on a run of long flights, New York to Tokyo, Tokyo to Sydney. Meetings stacked, time zones blurred. I did the coin and the bird before the airport. On the plane I wrote a name at noon, set my watch to the departure time and counted forward. The mirror I smashed in a first-class bathroom. The contract I planned to burn in the hotel. I fell asleep in a hotel room that looked expensive and empty. I woke at 11:57 p.m. with the kind of clarity you don't want. I had not burned the contract. I grabbed an old NDA from my briefcase and set it in the sink. I lit it. The paper caught and then fought. The flame slid down the paragraphs until it reached the last line. My name, and it stalled. A neat crescent of unburned paper remained, just my signature curve intact. I lit a second match, then a third. The crescent stayed white. That's when I felt the pressure. One hand on my chest, one hand between my shoulder blades. Not painful. Very sure. I looked up at the mirror. For a second the room doubled, then steadied. My face looked the same, but older around the eyes. Behind me, out of focus and still, stood the man from the subway. "Don't be late again," he said. The last of the paper blackened, the crescent went to ash, and the pressure lifted. The mirror showed only me again. I left the bathroom light on and slept with it that way. I hadn't done that since I was broke. Fear didn't make me stop. It made me precise. I tightened the schedule. I kept extra mirrors in a suitcase. I carried a lighter everywhere. I set multiple alarms around noon. I kept a spare coin in my coat and one in my briefcase. If I'd had an assistant count my breaths, I would have. Bad idea. Fear also made me cocky. I started to test the edges. A bad habit. One day I placed the gold coin at 11:55 p.m. instead of in the morning. I thought the paper didn't say when. The day punished me. Calls dropped in the middle of deals. A courier lost a single envelope with 3 critical signatures. A toothache started and didn't quit until I went back the next day to place the coin at dawn. I never did the late coin again. Another time I tried to feed Ash with my left hand instead of my right. He stepped back, refused the food, and stared at my wrist until the skin crawled. I switched hands. He ate. I put a note in my head, right hand only. The names were the worst to test. I tried not writing one. I told myself I would write it later in the afternoon. At 2:03 p.m., every bank I used froze. A finance site published a piece about me, written in a tone that sounded like the verdict had already been filed. At 2:11, I wrote a name from a business card I'd left on my desk. At 2:12, the article disappeared and my accounts went back to normal. Cause and effect, plain. Ash changed too. He got larger. Or the air around him did, or both. When he landed, the windowsill complained. Before dawn one morning I heard claws on tile. I found him in the hallway outside my bedroom with the door closed. He had a string of something red across his beak. He looked at me and waited. I didn't ask how he got in. I didn't ask what the red was. I gave him extra food. He started bringing me things. Once it was a ring I recognized from a man whose deal I had quietly wrecked by asking a single question in a meeting. The man had slapped me on the shoulder afterward and said no hard feelings. I didn't touch the ring. I let it sit on the sill until night, then put it in a drawer and didn't open that drawer for a year. I stopped asking where Ash found anything. There are answers that tie you to the question in a way you can't undo. Strange visits started to happen around the edges of the day. Taping on the balcony door at 1:17 a.m. Breath on glass. 5 oval marks in the morning, clear and separate, like someone had pressed their fingers and lifted them without smearing. I didn't look outside when it happened. In the morning I wiped the glass and told myself to buy better curtains. Then at a charity gala under lights so bright they made the room feel cold, a woman in a simple black dress stepped close and said, "How's the book?" I told her I didn't know what she meant. She watched my face for a second and decided something. "When you get to the end," she said, "you'll need a new one. Don't let it be you." I tried to ask who she was, but she was already gone into the crowd. I've looked for her face at every event since and never found it again. The book changed weight. Sometimes I carried it and felt like I was carrying more than paper. Even sitting on a dresser, it felt present. I opened it and listened for nothing. And sometimes nothing sounded like breathing. I told myself fatigue plays tricks. Then I wrote another name and didn't think about it for a few hours. I told myself the names were neutral. I told myself chance and statistics explained the news stories. I told myself the dead were mostly strangers, and people die all the time and I hadn't done anything directly. I told myself that dead names on plaques couldn't die twice. I built arguments and placed them in my head like furniture I could sit on. Some mornings the guilt sat at the edge of the bed and waited. On those days I made small adjustments to make myself feel like I wasn't completely hollow. I burned a contract that was actually valuable to me, not just a leftover. I fed Ash a little more. I placed the coin with extra care. Business went even better those days. I noticed that and then tried not to notice it. I got older. My friends did too. Some of them died in the ways wealthy people die. Quiet, managed, with a service and a slideshow. Some collapsed without warning. I went to the memorials, stood in corners and left early. I didn't get sick. I didn't slow down. I didn't change in photographs as much as I should have. People joked that I had a guy. I smiled and said nothing. The rituals replaced other habits. Vacations were scheduled around the noon line. I booked hotels with windows that opened. I learned which countries' coins were easy to buy quietly. I learned which mirrors in public spaces could be broken without attention. I learned which office shred bins burned cleanly and which didn't. I kept the book in a simple drawer or in my inside jacket pocket, never far away. I kept my apartment mirrors small and replaceable. I told staff to order them by the dozen. Someone asked once if everything was okay. I said I was clumsy. They laughed like it was a joke, and I let them. The years stacked up. The routine never softened. If anything, it sharpened. Waking, coin. Windows, Bird, 10 o'clock hour, mirror, midday, fire, noon, name. The rest of my life wrapped around those 5 points. Once, during a thunderstorm, the power went out across my block. I lit the contract with a match and watched the flame move without wind. The building was quiet. I could hear my own breathing and, underneath it, the small sound paper makes when it gives up. I had the thought that if I filmed it, I could convince myself later that it was just paper and fire, not a transaction. I didn't film it. Another time, a man I barely knew put a hand on my shoulder at an event and squeezed hard enough that it was almost hostile. The way some people test a fence. He leaned in and said, "You look great, younger even." I thanked him. He said, "What's your secret?" While he waited for the lie, hard work, timing, team. He stared at my eyes like he was looking for a reflection of himself. I gave him the line. He laughed. We moved on. I put his name in the book a month later, when I needed a name fast. I never saw him again. When something works every day for years, you start to believe it will always work. That's where I was. I treated the ritual like a job with no weekends. I was careful not to miss, and careful not to think too hard about why it worked, and careful not to imagine the end of it. But endings show up on their own clock, not yours. I noticed small changes first. Ash ate closer to my hand. The book's pages felt warmer sometimes. The phone rang more often from numbers that didn't show up as anything, and when I answered, I heard breathing and a faint hiss, like someone listening on an old line. The calls always ended before I said hello a second time. A neighbor I barely spoke to stopped me in the lobby and said, "I had the strangest dream about you. You were standing on a street, writing something, and every time you finished a line, the lights went out in one window in the building behind you." I told him it was weird and laughed. He laughed too, then asked my name like we were starting over. I told him. He repeated it the way people test how a word feels in their mouth. By then the book was more than half full. The first pages looked older than the last ones. Even though the paper was the same, the ink on the early names had spread into the fibers a bit. The later ones looked clean and sharp. I tried not to think of the book as a body. Once around midnight, I woke to the sound of something small moving from room to room, slow, patient tapping, like someone testing the edges of the baseboards. I lay still and counted the pauses. After a while, the tapping stopped outside my bedroom door. I waited for the door to open. It didn't. I waited for footsteps. There weren't any. In the morning, nothing was moved. The rugs were straight. The door was still shut. I found one thin shard of mirror in the hallway that I had missed with the broom the day before. I picked it up and wrapped it in paper. I told myself the tapping was the building settling after a temperature drop. I told myself that about a lot of sounds. I also told myself I could quit if I wanted. I practiced that thought like a line in a play. I can stop. I never tested it, not really. The one time I half tried, the banks froze and the article went up, and the message was clear. So I kept going. And then, after years of everything being predictable as long as I obeyed, the pattern shifted. It didn't ask me first. It didn't announce itself. It just changed. That part, when the rules get rewritten, is where everything you think you control gets measured. It's also where I realized the bargain could still deepen, even after 15 years of paying on time. That's the lead-in to what came next. After 15 years of doing the same 5 things every day, I thought I understood the deal. Then the rules changed. It began on a summer morning. At 7:31, I opened the window with food ready in my hand. Ash didn't come. The seconds stacked up strangely. One, then another, until I felt the weight of the silence. Finally, a shadow landed. Not Ash. Bigger. The feathers were darker, almost oily. Its eye looked wrong. Not like a stone, but like a hole. It ate the food without hesitation. Before it left, it dropped a folded scrap of paper on the sill. I didn't open it at once. I finished the rituals first. Only then at noon did I unfold the paper. The handwriting was the same as the first sheet I had received in the subway car years ago. 5 new lines. 1. Bury an heirloom at dusk. 2. Feed the bird from your mouth. 3. Break a mirror in someone else's house. 4. Burn a contract while it's still warm from 2 signatures. 5. Write your own name in the black book, then cross it out. At the bottom, the same warning as always, but with one new sentence. The price increases now. I laughed, but it came out like a cough. No, I said to the empty room. I tore the paper into quarters and dropped it in the trash. That night, my phone wouldn't shut off. It kept lighting up with a blank white screen. No messages, no numbers, just my own reflection staring back at me. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Ash was back, as if nothing had happened. In his beak was a ring. He dropped it on the floor. I froze. It was my mother's wedding ring, the same ring I buried with her years ago. The gold was bent, as though something massive had tried to wear it. I didn't ask how he had it. I fed him. A week later, another scrap appeared under my door. One sentence, written sharp: increase the offering or decrease the life. I tried bargaining. I fed Ash more. I broke 3 mirrors instead of 1. I placed 2 coins under different stones. I burned contracts that were still valuable, things I had fought hard to get. None of it felt like enough. Each night, tapping noises moved from room to room in my house. The phone glowed by itself. Sometimes in the corner of my vision, I thought I saw a man in a dark hat watching from the window. I told myself I could try the easier rules. The first was bury an heirloom at dusk. That meant stealing from a grave. I avoided it. The second was break a mirror in someone else's house. That felt more possible. I chose Gregory. He was a business acquaintance who never believed my stories. He had an apartment that looked more like a museum than a home. Glass, steel, and furniture no one actually used. I told him I'd drop by for a drink. He joked, "Break all the mirrors you want." He thought it was funny. I brought a small hammer in my bag anyway. When he stepped onto the balcony to take a call, I slipped into the guest bathroom. The mirror was wide and spotless. I swung once. The glass cracked down the center. I swung again until the shards fell into the sink. One sharp piece cut my palm open. I wrapped the cut in a towel embroidered with Gregory's initials and stuffed the shard in my pocket without knowing why. On the way home, the city felt tilted. Traffic lights held too long, then switched too fast. I got the sense that someone was walking just behind me, but every time I turned, no one was there. That night, I woke to the smell of dirt in my bedroom. From the door to my bed stretched a trail of soil, crumbling with each breath of air. At the foot of the bed was a small mound. I touched it. It collapsed, and inside was the same ring Ash had dropped days before, my mother's ring, cold in my hand. "Enough," I said out loud. The room didn't answer. The next day, I was scheduled to sign an important contract. The memory of the new rule echoed in my head. Burn a contract while it's still warm from 2 signatures. I canceled the meeting, lying about being sick. We rescheduled for later that week. When the day came, I sat in a glass office across from a man who signed his name with a squeak of the pen. I signed mine after. The ink was still drying when I excused myself and walked into an empty side room. I set the contract on fire in a metal tray. The heat rose fast, curling the paper until the black covered every line. That night I dreamed of a book filled with my name on every page. I woke with the taste of ash in my mouth. The last line from the new rules stayed with me. Write your own name in the black book, then cross it out. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that as long as I kept the old 5 rules, I would be safe. But the book seemed heavier each morning. It lay on my dresser like a weight that pulled the whole room toward it. Sometimes I opened it and swore I could feel the page move under my fingers like a chest rising to breathe. Eventually, I couldn't resist. At dawn, I carried the book onto the balcony. I opened it to a blank line. My pen hovered. I told myself crossing my name out would be symbolic. Nothing more. I wrote it. The letters didn't look like mine. They looked borrowed. I drew a line through them, but my hand shook, and the stroke was messy. Ash landed on the railing and stared at me like he was evaluating my work. Then he dropped something onto the balcony. A charred scrap of paper with the curve of my last letter burned into it, black and perfect. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. "Don't cross out what you can't afford," the voice said. It wasn't the man from the subway. It was more than one voice speaking as one. The price increases now. The line went dead. After the call, I didn't go to work. I didn't shower. I walked the streets like someone trying to outpace his own shadow. I passed the park where I'd written my very first name years ago. The bench was gone, replaced by a newer one. Progress always erases the places where you become someone else. That evening I went to my mother's grave. I brought a trowel, because ritual demands ceremony even when you don't believe in it anymore. I dug at the corner of the plot, careful not to disturb the center. 6 inches down, the dirt changed. Softer. The trowel hit something with a dull sound. It was her ring again, bent. I put it back and covered it. On the way home, I passed a brownstone with the door left open by a box of groceries. I saw a mirror hanging in the hallway. My hand went to the shard of Gregory's mirror still in my pocket. I stepped inside, raised my arm, then froze when a child's voice called from the kitchen. "Mom?" I backed out immediately. Some lines can't be crossed even for me. The next morning Ash was waiting as usual. This time when I held out the food, he leaned forward and took it directly from my lips. Quick, intimate, and disgusting. A kiss from something that wasn't supposed to be that close. When he finished, he clicked his beak in a slow rhythm like counting. That day I did the full ritual. Coin under the stone, mirror shattered, contract burned, name written. Nothing unusual happened. For the first time in weeks, the air around me felt stable. I thought maybe the storm had passed. That night I woke to wings in the bedroom. Hard ash. More. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The dark felt crowded, moving in slow waves. Feathers brushed my arms, my face, my chest. I kept my eyes closed because I knew light wouldn't help. A beak tapped at my lips. I opened my mouth. A piece of bread was pushed in. I chewed and swallowed. A voice, my voice, but heavier, doubled, said good. In the morning, the black book was open on the nightstand. My name was written again. Not by me. The line I'd drawn through it was gone. I tore the page out. I tore it again and again until the pieces drifted like dead moths. On the balcony railing, Ash watched with an interest that felt impolite. When the last scrap floated away, he spread his wings bigger than ever and made a low sound I'd never heard before. Not a caw, a growl. That was when I understood the book doesn't belong to me anymore. I belong to it. Tonight I've decided not to write a name. I placed the coin this morning. I fed ash from my mouth. I broke a mirror and swept the glass with steady hands. I burned a contract I should have kept. But when noon came, I closed the book. I left the page blank. Now it's 11:57 p.m. The phone glows on the table with no number. The tapping moves across the walls, closer and closer, as if the house is filling with invisible footsteps. Ash is at the window. Behind him, on the balcony glass, I see the outline of a hat. Maybe it's connected to a head. Maybe the glass refuses to show it. I say I won't write the name, but my hand is moving. The pen is in it. The book is open. The page waits. The sounds around me are like people whispering in the next room. The pen touches the first letter. The letter is a door. You asked me my secret. Everyone asks. Here it is. I do 5 things every day. Coin, bird, mirror, fire, name. That's how I stayed rich. That's how I stayed alive. But now the rules have changed. Now the price is higher. If someone ever sits across from you on a subway and hands you a folded piece of paper, don't open it. Don't even touch it. But if you do, and if you follow the rules, maybe you'll only end up rich. Maybe you won't end up like me. The book is heavier tonight. It feels alive. The pen moves faster. My name is forming on the page. I don't know if I'm writing it or if it's writing me. The phone buzzes. Unknown number. I answer because I always do. Good, the voices say. More than one. Too many. You'll sleep tonight. How many pages are left? I ask. 3, they answer. For now. I close the book. It's heavier than before. I place it on the nightstand. Careful, like setting down an animal that could bite. I turn off the light. In the dark, mirrors are only ideas. Birds are only doors. Names are only knives waiting for a hand. If I ever stop, I die. That's the rule. Tomorrow the morning will come. The coin waits. Ash waits. The book waits. And somewhere out there, a stranger is walking past a bench, not knowing they might be the most important person I'll never meet. Good night.